On November 7, 2015, Xi Jinping and Ma-Ying-jeou met formally in Singapore. It was the first meeting between leaders from both sides of the Taiwan straits since 1949, when, after a protracted and debilitating civil war, the Communist Party displaced the Nationalist or Kuomintang Party and established the People's Republic of China. What's the meaning of this historic meeting, which both sides recognize as a breakthrough to promote peace and mutual prosperity? What's the driving motivation for each side? How do they differ? Why now? And how do the exquisitely calibrated protocols affect the sensitivities of the relationship? Let's look at what happened at the XiMa meeting to get closer to China.
It all began with a handshake that went on for more than a minute. In the meeting afterwards, Xi and Ma discussed a variety of topics that were aimed to promote peace and mutual prosperity.
Looking back on the 66 years of cross-strait development, we can see that no matter how much ordeal the two sides have undergone and how long the two sides have been isolated from each other, they cannot be pulled apart, because we are brothers who are still connected by our flesh, even if our bones are broken.
In 1949, the People's Liberation Army led by the Communist Party of China defeated the Kuomintang and founded the People's Republic of China. The remaining Kuomintang led by Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan. After decades of hostility, in 1987, the two sides began cautious rapprochement, when Taiwan residents were permitted to visit the mainland. Since then, trade, business, and other exchanges across the Taiwan Strait have been increasing steadily. In December 1991, both sides commenced negotiations to promote exchanges across the strait. At the start, the mainland side put forward the necessity to uphold the One China principle. Both sides brainstormed for ways to express this principle and finally agreed on oral expression by Taiwan representatives about the One China principle. Despite setbacks from 1994 till 2008, this consensus laid a solid foundation for cross-strait relations. A series of high-level exchanges took place. Trade links improved rapidly. Regarding the 2015 meeting, Xi Jinping says it was to secure the benefits gained from the peaceful development of their cross-strait relations.
We should prove to the world with concrete actions that the Chinese people from both sides have the capabilities and wisdom to solve their own problems.
He added that both sides should adhere to the 1992 consensus of the One China principle and consolidate common political foundations. Xi's words were echoed by Ma-Ying-jeou.
Because the two sides both respect the 1992 consensus, we were able to yield some fruitful results, including the 23 agreements reached during the past 7.5 years, and making the cross-strait relations reach a more stable period.
Joining me now from Taipei is You Zixiang, Professor of Communications in Shishin University. And here in Beijing, we have Zhu Songling, Professor at the Taiwan Research Institute in Beijing Union University. Welcome, professors. Professor Yo, it's been a week since the XiMa meeting. What's been the reaction in Taiwan?
First, we must know that this news came as a surprise for most of the Taiwanese people, because although this kind of discussion already going on for about 2 years about the possibility of a meeting like this, but it still came as a surprise because people did not expect that this will come this soon and at this time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is like the general reactions in Taiwan. When we talk about this, we must know that Taiwan is a diverse society. So there is always a group of Taiwanese. They don't like any political progress between two sides of Taiwan Straits. But generally speaking, majority of Taiwanese people, according to our several public polls, I think they still consider this meeting as historical, significant, and valuable accomplishment.
Professor Jeou, we heard from Professor Yo in Taiwan that there are significant differences of opinion in Taiwan. On the mainland, are there differences of opinion?
大陆的观点基本上就是正面的肯定了这个西马会晤，认为这个
Media from the mainland has given a lot of positive feedback to the XiMa meeting, approving of its significance to the development of cross-strait ties, as well as the peace and stability of the region.
指明了一个方向的。对于
It guides future development of the relationship and helps with maintaining peace and stability against the backdrop of the coming leadership
和
change.
平稳定是有帮助的。
Let's look at what each side thinks about specific elements of the meeting in terms of picking out the words or the phrases that they think is important. Professor Yo, let's start on Taiwan. What are some of the words or phrases that have hit the highlights in the media?
I think if you listen to Mr. Xi's speech or you read his transcript afterwards, you can find out there are two main parts in his speech. I can call it the sensibility part and the sense part. For the sensibility part, I think Mr. Xi is trying to express to Taiwanese people that we are brothers, that our blood is thicker than water, that no matter how big the waves and winds in the past, we can overcome those obstacles and no one can separate us. And for the sense part, I think Mr. Xi also talked about we don't want to lose what we already gained in the past years. We don't want the historical tragedies to repeat itself. So we need to stay on the right path. I think these two parts are very appealing, both emotionally and rationally.
Professor Jeou, on the mainland, were there differences in terms of the highlights of Mr. Xi's speech that people picked up?
很多是比较重合类似的。
Priority is to control political risks across the straits and prevent them from turning into crises.
和平稳定。
So is there a difference in the concept of one China, which is extremely important, obviously, on the mainland and in Taiwan? At least there are differences. Professor Yo, do you see that as a difference, where in China the emphasis was on the 1992 consensus, and in Taiwan you said the emphasis was more on the brotherhood and long-standing relationships that can sustain any problems?
Beyond that, I think the 1992 consensus is, of course, a key message that's being communicated in this important summit or bilateral meeting. Because for the 1992 consensus, you know, in Taiwan, although it has been mentioned numerous times in past 2 decades, but still some people, especially the people from opposition parties, they try to raise the challenge from the mere existence of this consensus. They say, no, there's no 92 consensus. But by this meeting between Mr. Xi and Mr. Ma, I think the whole world witnessed that the leaders from both sides, they reconfirmed that there was a 1992 consensus, and this is the foundation for the current peaceful and stable relationship in Taiwan Strait. So we need to remember that by this meeting, they both consolidate the 1992 consensus. So no one can say there's no consensus. At least in the year of 2015, these two leaders reaffirmed that there was a consensus in the past.
So I'm hearing significant positive emotions on both sides of the straits, as represented by both of you here today, and everybody in the world applauds that. My concern would be, are the expectations of the people, both on the mainland and in Taiwan, now set so high that people now expect more progress and a continuation of the momentum, and that may be more difficult in general, and particularly with the upcoming elections in Taiwan. Is there a danger of elevating expectations too high and therefore having a reverse feeling? Professor Jeou.
I agree with Professor Yeo, as he has just said, that both sides worry that once the opposition party, which denies the 1992 consensus, comes into power, it may bring harm to the peaceful development of cross-strait ties. In the XiMa meeting, both leaders have put forth the idea that whatever party you belong to, whatever views you once sided with, as long as you now support the 1992 consensus, we will extend our welcome and advocate peace and stability. I think by doing so, Mr. Xi is also communicating to the DPP candidates. We want nothing else but recognition of the 1992 consensus, which is the very basis to maintaining a peaceful relationship in the future. Without such a precondition, we cannot guarantee any sustainability of development of the ties. We are not exaggerating the consequences. The political mindset of the Chinese decides such interpretation and understanding. In our view, behind the silence of Ms. Tsai Ing-wen lies the DPP principle of Taiwan independence. What they ultimately seek is Taiwan independence, as opposed to the one China policy. So if Tsai wins the election, peaceful cross-strait development may come to an end and chaos may follow.
We'll continue this. We'll be right back.
"22-year-old Taiwanese student Fan Chunya is turning a fresh page in her life. She has little experience on the mainland, but she has just started her master's program at the Guanghua School of Management at Peking University.
My classmates are the best students picked out by the university with clear visions about their future. It's hard to follow their fast pace.
The Chinese mainland has opened its doors to Taiwanese students for the past 30 years. In 2010, the Chinese government introduced a new policy that allows Taiwanese students to use their test scores achieved in Taiwan to apply for universities on the mainland. That has dramatically boosted the number of Taiwanese students studying here, with the total number jumping to 10,000. With only 2 months in Beijing, the young women students have mingled well with local students. Their mainland classmates enjoy the diversity as well.
It helps us to really get to know one another. It's great that more and more students from both sides of the straits can engage face-to-face instead of through the media, which could create bias.
Taiwanese students are very active. I appreciate the fresh thoughts and ideas they brought to the class. I really hope there will be more Taiwanese students coming to the mainland.
Student exchanges is only a tip of the iceberg. In 2014, daily cross-strait passenger flights carried 46 million passengers. Mainland tourists accounted for 40% of all visitors to Taiwan. Annual trade reached $200 billion in the same year. As of September 2015, the Chinese mainland accounted for 38% of Taiwan's total exports.
Welcome back. Look, we've seen the XiMa meeting be extremely good. Everybody recognizes that. So one obvious question that comes up is, why hasn't it happened before? Why has it taken so long? Professor Yeo, give me the take from Taiwan.
So first is the Civil War mentality, then comes the Cold War mentality. During the Cold War years, both people from both sides still consider each other as enemies. So even if one of the enemies try to smile to us, we still think that's some kind of charm offensive, then that represent risk and dangers, so we deny to contact with them. So in the before the year of 1987, Taiwan has an official policy called 3 No's. That's from Taiwan leader Jiang Jingguo. His policy is with Chinese mainland. Our basic attitude position is no contact, no negotiation, and no compromise. So in the year of 1987, it's the year that Jiang allowed those old soldiers from Chinese mainland to visit their families in the mainland. So in that year, we start to contact with each other. And 5 years later, we have the 1992 consensus. And 6 years later, we have the 1993 Singapore talk. So that's a progress. But it's a very difficult progress because many people know after the 1993 meeting, then two of Taiwan's leaders, one is Li Denghui, another one is Chen Shui-bian, they choose a rather risky path because they are leaning to the Taiwan independence. And in the result is that we have more than 10 years of rocky relations across the strait. So that's until the year of 2008, when Ma is in the office, we start the current status quo of a more stable, more peaceful relations between two sides. So it's, you can say the tragedies do repeat itself many times. So that's why we have a XiMa meeting. It's so valuable, so important. It's a milestone for both sides of Taiwan Strait.
Professor Jeou, why has the meeting occurred now and why didn't it happen earlier? We see such excellent results, very positive as part of the philosophy really of both peoples. So why did it take so long?
刚才尤教授也专门提到了，其实这个两岸之间的这个问题呢，是由于
Just like what Professor Yeo has said, the civil war between the KMT and the Communist Party of China brought about a zero-sum mindset, where both parties sought to destroy the other. So there was little possibility for the leadership meeting in military rivalry. Then, during the Cold War, the two parties sided with different camps. As a result, more international influence was introduced into the original domestic issue, making the scenario even more complicated, and the two leaders were less likely to meet each other. After 1987, we enjoyed more cross-strait communications and economic issues started to emerge. We adopted a bottom-up mechanism to address the economic affairs. In 2013, office directors responsible for the cross-strait affairs met each other and initiated policy-making process on the issue. However, such a bottom-up strategy has failed to address the many problems that keep arising. We need another way to back it up. That is, top leaders need to come together on the stage to launch a top-down mechanism. In this way, implementations are carried out bottom-up, while consultation and negotiation are going top-down. This dual-track mechanism facilitates better transparency and communication, eliminates misunderstanding, and serves for the peace, stability, and prosperity of the region.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. The historic meeting between Xi Jinping and Ma-Ying-jeou has drawn attention at home and abroad. Let's take a look.
Journalists crowded the venue as the event proceeds.
In the opening talk of the meeting, both of the leaders mentioned their historical past. If they overcome differences in historical memory from the two sides, it will play as the foundation for the two to seek a common ground.
Xi Jinping shook hands with Ma-Ying-jeou. They talked and smiled with each other, waved hands with journalists, and then went to the meeting. This was the first time I witnessed a great event in the history. It impressed me a lot.
It's even been closely monitored across the Pacific Ocean.
We welcome the steps both sides of the Taiwan Strait have taken in recent years to reduce tensions and improve cross-strait relations. The United States has a deep and abiding interest in peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. The benefits that stable and positive cross-strait ties have brought to both sides of the Taiwan Strait, the United States and the region have been enormous.
We already have enough simmering crises, South China Sea, East China Sea, and the U.S. has no interest in being part of stirring up a new crisis when you don't need one. And the other way of saying that is, if the two sides of the Taiwan Strait can get together in this kind of way and promote cross-strait exchanges, economic cooperation, investment, and the like, that's one of the better things going on in East Asia right now.
As one of the early advocators of the meeting, Li Feng believes it has a very historical significance.
It's a historical handshake. It means improvement in cross-strait relations. President Xi mentioned that people across the strait are one family. They both belong to China. This is the mainland's basic policy to Taiwan. We need to develop cross-strait relations on the basis of the 1992 consensus. I think Taiwan should join the Chinese dream of the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation.
Professor Jeou, Professor Yeou, I want to talk about the international implications of the XiMa meeting. We all know it's very significant, but what I want to do is look at the international implications from each side. So, Professor Jeou, from the mainland side, how do you view the international implications of this meeting?
我所看到的一些国际上的评价基本上是正面的。
The international response, as I have observed, is quite positive. Generally, people think the meeting is conducive to cross-strait peace and stability, and thus of the Asia-Pacific. It is a gesture of the leaders' hope for harmony and stability of the area, which facilitates consultation to solve the cross-strait issues. Such views represent the majority.
Professor Yeou?
I think this meeting has sent a loud and clear message to the international community that is, from 2008, Mr. Ma has taken a right path and to maintain the stability and peaceful relation between the two sides of Taiwan Strait. This message has been sent to the whole world. And we know now we already have too many hot spots around the world. And they are trying to send a message to the world that Taiwan Strait won't be and shouldn't be another hotspot for the world. So this is the first message. I think the second message, and the global community also received, is that for the both sides of people, we can solve our own problem by our own capacities and our own wisdom. So we can solve because we share the same culture, we share the same language, and we can make it work.
But I can't believe that the international communications theory that each side wants is precisely the same. So I may ask you a little bit of a difficult question. How would you distinguish between a mainland view and a Taiwan view of the international communications impact of this meeting? Professor Yeou, give it a shot.
I think for Taiwan, in the past, we have been viewed by many international society members as troublemakers, as a troublemaker. And because we have an election next year, and the opposition party's candidates' position on the cross-strait issues might give some some countries impression that Taiwan might go back to the old path of troublemaking. So I think for Mr. Ma, he's trying to send this message to the international world that he represents the right path. He represents a path that can create stability and peaceful relationship in this area. And for Mr. Xi, I think it's a different one. For Mr. Xi, he wants to send a message to the world that although the Chinese mainland is rising, but it will not create more tension and instability in this area. We can shake hands. We can have direct dialogues. We will not use forces or threats in dealing with the Taiwan matters.
Professor Jeou, from mainland's point of view, if you had to distinguish between the objective and to the international community of the meeting, the message the mainland wants to say, what would it be?
我想两岸之间都想传达的信息，我刚才已经提到了，就是为了维持
I've mentioned that the shared message the two sides want to convey is to safeguard peaceful development in the region. This is the very key. Besides, in our view, people's denial of the existence of the 1992 consensus is likely to bring about political crises. So as we failed to deliver our message to Taiwan Island and the world at large, we Chinese want to pool our wisdom and seek other means to address this issue. So despite huge differences concerning the interpretation of One China, leaders from both sides can still have a meeting and shake hands with each other. With this, we are demonstrating our pursuit for peace and stability, as well as our capability of controlling risks and tackling challenges all by ourselves.
这就更加说明了这个两岸的领导人啊，对于这种和平、这种自己解决相关的问题、管控危机的这种能力或者渴望。
You mentioned that you hope the Westerners would understand more deeply what's happening in this region. What aspects of what you think Westerners think is a misunderstanding or is an oversimplification? What don't Westerners understand?
有一点，就是西方人对于两岸的分歧夸大，这个分歧重在是两岸。
Well, the Westerners are exaggerating differences across the straits, namely on the interpretation of One China. Both sides have their own ways of understanding this issue, but we all regard ourselves as Chinese. I think this is a sure path for development of the Chinese people. As Mr. Xi has said, we Chinese have long cherished the tradition of looking at issues of the country and the family together. That was emphasized by him when he said that as long as we are one people, our blood is thicker than water. Nothing can prevent our ultimate reunification. This is one thing. Second, Westerners are exaggerating the differences of lifestyles across the straits, which I do not see the same way. Third, there is a lack of emphasis laid on the 1992 consensus on the western parts. I don't think Westerners have a profound enough understanding of the role such a consensus plays in cross-strait relations. The consensus is the political basis for peaceful and prosperous development of the two sides, and an integral part of the relationship. The sustainable development of cross-strait ties calls for recognition of the consensus head-on. Other reactions are also harming the relationship instead of maintaining it. The current situation is summarized quite differently by the Western media as compared to what the two leaders can want to communicate. I call for extensive and active responses and attention from the international community so as not to thrust the potential political risks into huge crises.
Thank you both. We'll all be following this to be sure. And goodbye. The XiMa meeting was historic, overcoming history, as it were, to build a better future. Each side recognized the opportunities as well as the challenges and dangers. To avoid unintended signals, protocol was meticulous. No titles, rather the leaders from the two sides of the Taiwan Straits. Each addressed the other as Mr. Parallelisms were strict, a fine line carefully drawn. What were the motivations? For Xi Jinping, it was a dramatic expression of his proactive policies, befitting China's rise. During his term of leadership, Xi looks for a real breakthrough across the straits. Xi said, "There is no force that can separate us," adding, "Today, we are sitting together so that our tragic history won't repeat itself." For Ma-Ying-jeou, the upcoming election is not looking good for his nationalist party, and he was securing his legacy and improving relations with the mainland. Ma said, "We want to consolidate ties across the straits," adding, "Both sides should respect each other's values and way of life." Experts say that of all the China-U.S. differences, Taiwan is the most sensitive. That's why we all applaud the XiMa meeting. And that's why we watch across the Taiwan Straits to keep closer to China.